Today we've got Jim Benson with us, who many of you will know as the author of Personal Kanban, but I'm here to tell you so much more to the man. Jim, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, I always would like to introduce myself. So I'm Jim Benson, have a long history of building giant things with extremely large teams, and have always been all about collaboration. And that could be collaboration with the Kanban, it could be collaboration in Agile, it could be collaboration when building a subway system or running the Names Project AIDS Memorial Quilt, or music or anything else. And these last few years during COVID, I've been doing a lot of remote coaching and consulting, and then also building an online school and writing a book. And I want work to be more humane and people to be happy.
Lovely. And Jim and I know each other from many years back. We've had the opportunity to talk, to cohabit, to banter many times. So should bode well for a conversation today. So right off the bat, I know you're working on a new book, and that's why I was very keen to get you on here to hear what the new book. So if you're listening to this and you haven't read Personal Kanban, you should. Because it is a good book, and I'm not saying that just because I'm friends with him. But then secondly, let's hear about the new book. What's it all about, Jim?
So the new book is called The Collaboration Equation. I've literally been writing it for 5 years. And the reason was because I almost finished it, and then I got a client where it's one of those clients where when you walk in, you know that you're going to learn about as much from them as they are from you, in a good way. And so for me, that client was Turner Construction in New York. And so I spent about 5 years plying our trade, as it were, with all aspects of the construction industry in New York City. So building skyscrapers, multi-billion-dollar buildings, with tons of complexity in the construction process. And it took me back to my roots as an urban planner. This book itself basically goes through the pragmatics of collaboration. So not just like we're pairing or we're deciding to like work together on a thing, but if you set up a system with your team to figure out from planning to completion how things are going to be done, that is a long collaboration. And everybody needs to know their roles in that collaboration, their responsibilities, what they need to do as professionals, how to help each other out, etc. And this gives a system not only to build those systems, but then also a system about how to recognize and maintain cultures of collaboration. So treating culture as a pragmatic object that you can manage, not just something that, oh, hey, our culture is really great.
Or it's owned by HR. No, that's brilliant. And the reason I gravitate towards that too is you often hear me talking about the collaborative connective tissues, and anybody who's just going bingo that knows me. But for me, that's that organizational ability to connect both horizontally and vertically to allow that information flow of collaboration. And I assume that's partially what you're talking about within that, but then setting up frameworks to enable that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And recognizing that just like with a marriage or a friendship, there's no one way to do this. There isn't like Scrum for marriage, where everybody gets together and does exactly the same thing that comes out of a book. You have to actually know what the needs are of the professionals that you're working with and of your customers and of leadership, and that needs to create, or you need to create, a system that says, all right, these people need these things. We need this information to get this done. How do we pragmatically build and maintain that cultural and operational set of systems?
So yeah, let me be really clear about that, picking up on that too. So that says to me, it's not, so normally practitioners come in and their first tool to do that is we'll do Scrum, or we'll do Safe, or we'll do whatever that might be.
Prince
This is
2
not what,
or RUP or whatever, yes.
yeah. So this is not what you're talking about, right?
No, I'm talking about at the beginning of any of our processes, we generally sit down with a team or with a group of teams, and we kind of begin to figure out what their culture is, first by understanding what's interrupting them. Because if you ask people what's interrupting you, they will give you a lot more information than you know what to do with. Then the second thing that we'll do is we'll have them do a value stream mapping exercise and map out what the structure of their system is currently, and then ask them, what's wrong with this structure. So from the beginning, we're saying what's really happening, who is it really happening to, and then what would you really like it to look like. And then we build a system with them to get them from now to whatever is better than now. And we know that in that they are going to need more information, they're going to need visualizations, but that they're not going to need a canned process from somebody else who's written a book, even me.
Even you, yes.
Even
Let me just dig a little bit deeper on that. I heard you say value stream maps, and whenever I hear that term oft used, I spent a lot of time with Lean in the 2000s and Toyota Lean, right? So when you talk about value stream maps, talk to me a little bit about the difference in the value stream maps that you're using as opposed to some of the things that we see around the traps.
Okay. So Tony Ann and I are also on the faculty for the Lean Enterprise Institute. I have been making value streams in one way or another since the mid 90s, probably. The first one I did was literally tracking how a grape got from the middle of Michoacan in Mexico to a grocery store in the States. All of the regulatory hurdles it went through, everything. It was a massive, massive thing. And from that first value stream, I was already differing from lean value streams, which tended to look at just the pragmatics of what happens, then what happens, then what happens, then what happens. And then they go look for the waste. I don't care about waste. I care about people. And so what happens when we run a value stream mapping exercise, especially like with a software development team or with a team of knowledge workers, it's usually the first time that the team has actually sat down as a group and answered the key question of, what do we do every day here? How do we actually get our work done? Otherwise, everybody's just working on a bunch of assumptions and they don't know, what the hell's going on, basically. So they start to map out, this happens, this is the thing that happens before, this is the thing that happens before. That's straight up normal value stream mapping. Where we will take them after they get that built is not just, where are their problems and how can we fix them, but we start to look for where are areas where you could be collaborating more.
Yeah, right.
So with almost every software development team, one of their major problems is dependencies. And dependencies are a monster under the bed. They do not exist. You create the dependencies in your head. So we build an org chart, or we build teams. Agile, we love our teams. Well, every team is a silo. And dependencies are the inefficiencies of working between your silo and another silo. They're the bad planning between your silo and another silo. They're the unvoiced expectations between your silo and another silo. And that's one of the first places that we go. So in the value stream mapping exercise, two things are happening in the team. One is the team members are, for probably the first time ever, figuring out that they hurt their team members every day in the work that they do, unwittingly, and never would if they knew. We've literally had people burst into tears and like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm doing this to you. And to realize that outward with leadership and with other teams. And when we're doing that, we're always paying attention to the emotion in the room, because the emotion is not somebody being hysterical or unprofessional, but it's actually the pent up professionalism in the person that hasn't been able to get out because they're stuck because of this stupid rule or this stupid silo or this stupid decision making structure or what have you. And they don't fix those things because they haven't taken the time to build a value stream map to see where they could fix them. So that's what we do. And obviously I talk a lot about it and I get excited about it because they're so emotional, they're cathartic, and they're a great place to begin any improvement at all.
And thank you for indulging me. And there was a reason that I dug into that a little bit deeper, not just my own indulgence, but within remote agility framework, that much of what you're saying there coincides with our thoughts around that, and value stream mapping is something that we have in our tool set as well. And it's really the same thing. How you said that teams were, each time you build teams, there's silos, and we have a saying that silos become chasms if you don't address that. Right.
Yeah.
And exactly what you're talking about there is exactly what we think in terms of that. So, and I won't not say that I haven't been inspired, because, I have worked with much of your stuff along the way. So thank you for that. That takes us to another.
It's impedance.
Yes.
So the thicker the walls of the silo, the harder it is for the signal to transfer from entity here to entity here. And that impedance comes with huge costs, and not just financial, and not just quality, and not just time, but also human costs, because that's what we stay awake up at 3 o'clock in the morning going, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening to me. It's because we're stuck in a stupid system that's just anti-human.
Emotional, psychological, and that's why one of the things we're very passionate about in the framework is that psychological part of it. We really want to hone in on that ability to think about how we can make that better. I love that, Jim, and that brings me to another question I have for you there, because just listening to you around that, a lot of what you're talking about, you've done physically for a very long time. Now we've moved into this whole hybrid remote frame. What we are here at Remote AF see is that it's exacerbated those problems that you've just talked about. So what you're talking about now becomes a greater need, but also how do you do that now that we've moved into that remote? So I'm really interested to hear about your thoughts, because I know you're working in that sphere.
We had a really interesting thing happen right before Christmas, which is we started working with a group, and the group had 12 teams in it, maybe about 80 people total out of this huge group. And the COVID had brought with it a lot of change. Most of their leadership had changed. The company had grown considerably. The focus of the company had changed, and the specifics of how these people did their jobs were changing. And we were trying to figure out ways to get, they wanted to get past the people who were saying, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that. And I was like, change fatigue is real, and these people haven't just had some change. So if you count the months that we've been working together, they've had more than a major change a month. And some of these people have had like sick family members, they've lost family members, they've had like the normal life stuff on top of that. So what we did Tony and I took a month off, and while we were gone, we had the team leads get together with their individual teams and do a change audit. Basically figure out what their change portfolio was. And it was beautiful not to be involved in that. Because we came back and then they said, here's all the things that we found. And the conversations that they had were so emotional and deep and real and pragmatic. And if we were there, I know it's obvious just from me talking right now, I would have pontificated. I would have told them what their pain represented or whatever. And because we weren't there, they got to discuss those as families, and now we're able to act on those things. But that change fatigue is what I think is what we're really seeing everywhere, is kind of this information starvation, human interaction starvation, and then change fatigue.
Yeah, I agree with you totally. Where do you see the balance though? So I think we all recognise that trying to do it all totally synchronous is too much. So
Yep.
then we have to think about, okay, we're going to do asynchronous, but how do you balance that well? It's something that I get asked a lot,
Yeah.
because you can either go too far left or too far right, and we know that in the beginning of COVID, everybody went too far right, and
Yep.
every meeting and everything, and even the leaders got themselves in a world of hurt as well.
Mhm.
Leadership had to change the way. So thoughts?
Well, it seemed like there was this curve where first everybody was just like freaking out and running in different directions and trying desperately to grab onto anything that felt normal. Then it seemed like there was like this one day where everybody woke up and said, "Hey, if I shut off Slack, I can get just a ton of work done." And then they did that for like 2 months, and then they're like, "Is this all there is to my life?"
Okay.
What happened to the people? So the when we were together in offices, other human beings were themselves visual controls. I could see that you were there, and that didn't mean I had to talk to you, but it meant that I knew you were there.
Mm.
I knew you were typing, and I knew you were talking on the phone, and I knew you were drinking a Coke. And that is reassuring. So, us knowing what's going on is a huge part of us being able to act. And when everyone looks like this, because you can't see them, or they all look like this, where they're all flat on a screen, you lose that. And I remember years ago, Dave Anderson and Corey Lattis and Sanjeev Augustine and I were working on a project with NBC Universal, way, 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 way before COVID, before there was even an online Kanban tool. And there were 3 offices. Those 3 offices were constantly at each other's throats because they couldn't. There was no mechanism for relationship, and there was no communication of state or triggers for action. So the only time they'd talk to each other was when they called up and said, "You screwed this up."
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? So they only had negative conversations. And right after we built this Kanban for them, which was a stupid Kanban, it was like all on a huge wall with 11 by 17 or A3 sheets of paper. And there were 3 massive cameras aimed at it, and then they simulcast it to the other offices.
Oh yeah.
Even that gave that group enough information to see a couple things. One, stuff actually got done. The other offices weren't trying to screw them over. There was no conspiracy, against them. And behavior change was almost immediate.
Yeah.
So the delivery of visual information that provides state information of what's going on, triggers for what you need to do next, descriptions of plans or things that are coming up, understanding of things that have been completed, how they worked right or didn't, and how the learning in those is changing the direction that you're going in, your culture, and so forth. If your visual system meets those needs, your team's probably going to be dealing with COVID pretty well.
Yeah. So that's a really good point, and a probably good segue into a question that I wanted to ask you around that.
Mhm.
So you've been working with Abayas for a very long time.
Mhm.
So Abaya for us is not a new term. For anyone that's listening to this has never heard of that, Abaya is a big visual room or a big visual board or a big visual capability these days. I'm not giving you the pure lean sense. Go look it up if you want that one. But the thing around that is when we started to construct the remote agility framework, I remember the conversation, really well. We're going, oh, we can't do obeyers anymore. And it was a couple of went, yeah, we can. And so we invested a lot of time in thinking about how we do that. Now, I know that you've been working with obeyers as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want to get into the technology thing because there's plenty of stuff out there we can use for obeyers, right?
Mm-hmm.
My question to you is, what are the integral things that you think that the obeyer really needs? And how do you design for it? Because I'll just give you my little 2 cents on the soapbox. You and I had a chat about this previous to this call, right? There's a lot of canned solutions out there, and a lot of people are handing out this will do the job for you.
Mm-hmm.
But how do you make it work for the organisation, Jim? I really want to, and I'm sure everyone else wants to hear your thoughts on that.
So the beauty of the Obeya was clear to me clear back when I was a civil engineer and we were building subway systems, and there was just so much disparate information that you needed to process at any given time. We didn't call it an Obeya then, because in 1991, I don't think anybody outside of Japan called anything an Obeya. But we called it a war room. And when I got back into construction in New York, and at any given point in time, you had to track the procurement process, the safety of the site, who was on site at what time, what contractors were coming up, how they interacted with each other, the financial impacts of change orders and other changes to the scope. Just the amount of information was ridiculous. The moment that we set up Obeyas on one project in particular, the Coney Island Hospital project, a crazy thing happened, which is previously there's always been like this division between the general contractor and the trades. And tradespeople will do anything they can to like hide from the the GC, because they're kind of like the principal or the narc or the cop or whatever. And they're the man. They're going to come and tell you what to do. When that stuff went up in the Obeya room in the trailer at Coney Island, the trades started having their meetings in the meeting room, and individual tradespeople, like just random plumber, would walk in the morning, walk around the room, read things, and leave informed, right? And so this was like the craziest thing. So Turner also has a concept known as the right environment, where like they try and make each job site have an environment that enables professionals to be the best professionals they can be. And on that job site, they realized that their Obeya was extending their right environment past just them, or past just them and the management of the trades. So when the basement floor of the parking garage was done, which is like the base of this building, they built a room for the trades that had a kitchen and storage and tons of display space, so that they could have their own running Obeyas and do their own huddles.
That's pretty amazing, isn't it? Really, when you think about it. You're getting people together that would normally not even think about doing that.
It seriously made me cry. Yeah. So that project was running so smoothly that when COVID hit, they were the ones that ended up leading the company on COVID response, because they didn't have anything to freak out about. Their work was sufficiently calmed that they had the cognitive space, the capacity to be able to deal with that. So fast forward a couple of months and somebody gets sick and COVID. And Jim Benson doesn't get on planes anymore. He and his clients have to interact, but he and his company and our internal company needs to interact. And so we started building our first Obeya in Miro.
Yep.
and it worked beautifully. But organizationally, it was a disaster. So when we did the Obeya and we get all excited about it, and then we show it to other people, and there's like a board here and a board down here and a board over here and a board way over here and a board, and one board is this big and one board is super tiny, and there are different colors and everything, and there's just like no information architecture to that Obeya, which is a natural. The architecture of Mural and Miro lead to that, no matter how careful you are. So they work great, but it's hard to onboard people into them and show them stuff. The thing that we always have found, whether it was at the construction sites or whatever, is that the board needs to be immediately useful, or not the board, but the room, the Obeya room, needs to be immediately useful to everyone all the time. So it can't just be a Kanban, and you can't have like, even if it's in a really nice tool, there's a lot of really nice Kanban tools out there. A Kanban is only the visualization of one type of work, and it's only one type of conversation. Then there's a lot of tools out there that just give you junk bonds. One of them is the one that probably all of you are using, that starts with a jeer, and I wish it was different, but it is not. And so I want to show something here, and I'll bring it up, and it's not to recommend this particular tool, but it's to recommend this particular action. So present a window, and there's a window.
Technology, can Jim do it?
Yes, that's right. It always has to come with the little thing. So this is our current Obeya. So we have our operational area, we have a product development area, we have a sales area, etc. Okay.
Yep.
And this is in a tool called iObeya. And I'll just go over here to something with nothing in it so that I can just create what I want to show. So let's say, for example, that we have this is a Kanban, and let's just imagine that there's some tickets on here. So here's a ticket, and this ticket says worship remote AF. There we go. And we'll add me to that ticket. There we go. All right, so now we have a ticket here. And so what happens in Kanban land always is, if you needed to do something in this ticket, you would say like, the specifics of this are blah, 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 blah. Then you close this, and it becomes these little lines. This is not a visual control.
Not at all.
This is hidden information that is completely useless to you.
Yep.
So if you are using a Kanban system where you put in a ticket and something happens, and then you comment on it, and it becomes a couple of lines or a little comment box, that is not helpful. What is helpful? Well, what is helpful is, let's just say that I have a note, like a horrible emergency happens with this ticket, and I'm like, holy moly, this horrible thing has happened. You can do this, right? Yeah. So now let's go all the way back out to this. I know something's happened there. All right. Visual control means that there is a trigger, there is a call to action. Use a language from somewhere else that I know we all speak. There is a call to action here that says, this red sticky says Jim has to look at this. And then Jim goes in and he sees, whatever the content is. So way back over here in our Kanban, you can see that some of these have little calls to action. Here's one here on this particular ticket. That is the secret sauce. Being able to actually converse with each other in a visual control in a way that is immediate, it's professional, and it doesn't involve a second conversation. Like, I don't have to get into Slack and type, "Hey Tony, go take a look at ticket number 27-389." You will see that the Tony color is floating there, and people will need to go in and use it. And that is an unspoken professional connection. You get the information you need, the action you're supposed to take, the respect that you're due, and you clicking on it is respecting the person that left it there.
Yeah, I love that. And I like the idea there's a Tony color, by the way. And that we're worshipping remote.
That's all right.
There's no, so for us, that we talk about the remote event, and that completely aligns with, you need to be able to design it in the context of the work that you're doing, in not that cookie cutter momentum. So I think that's really good, Jim. Look, unfortunately, we are at the end of our time. You and I could speak for many.
That's what excitement does for you.
we could talk on, but I'm not sure anyone will listen to us. So in saying that, we're at the end of our time. One of the things I always do with anyone who's on all the remote things is give you an opportunity to tell people how they can get in touch with you, how they can hear and see the new book, all those types of things. So Jim, it's time for the gratuitous plug.
The gratuitous plug. Okay, so the book is coming up, and Tony was nice enough to mention the older book. There's 2 or 3 of them out there if you shake the Amazon tree and type in Jim Benson. At modusinstitute.com, MODUS institute.com. We have a lot of classes and a couple of certifications. Our certification isn't the 2-day sit there and get a certification. It's like a 4-month study project. It's like super intense. But what we focus on in all of the stuff that we do is, can we, as professionals, get the information that we need when we need it? Can we recognize when there's a problem? And then when problems or opportunities or things to solve do arrive, can we solve those in a humane and frankly exciting way? And so we like to deal a lot with in Lean, we say, what is the problem you are trying to solve? Oddly enough, when I've sat down with anybody who knows what the problem is they're trying to solve, if we work on it for a week, they find that they're trying to solve a different problem.
Yeah, correct.
So there's that introspection and that humility that we don't have all the answers, and we can't just apply something quickly. So if you go to Modus Institute, there's a bunch of ways to interact with me. There's a live chat thing, and Tony Ann or Dave or I are there quite often. We might be asleep sometimes. That's it. Otherwise, our founder on Twitter. And we love working with thoughtful, friendly people who are interested in making work-life better.
Fantastic. Thank you for taking the time. And I can only concur. Look, reach out to Jim, reach out to Tony Ann and Dave. I many occasions have, and Jim's always been very gracious with his time. So from us here, thanks again, Jim. It's been fantastic to have you on the cast.